final section of text functions is data validation. Data validation is a tool that allows the user to limit potential inputs during data entry. Data validation ensures that all data entered within a defined cell matches the validation criteria that was previously defined. And if it doesn't, Excel will return an error. Restricting input criteria helps ensure data quality and reduce the risk for potential formula errors and limits the need for data cleansing prior to analysis. Data validation can be found under the Data tab of the Excel ribbon. If we navigate to this tab and select Data Validation, a pop-up appears, showing us the different data validation options that are available. Using this toolbox, we can define what type of data we want to restrict a specific cell or range to. There are several options provided. For example, whole numbers between 0 and 100, or dates within the last year. The Input Message tab gives us the ability to define a custom message that appears when someone clicks on the cell range that the data validation applies to. This can be used to give the user some additional details around what type of data is allowed in the cell range. The Error Alert tab allows us to define an error message that is displayed when a user tries to enter data into the cell range that is outside the predefined data validation criteria. We're going to walk through an example of how to use data validation functionality to ensure data standardization in a table. As any data analysis can attest, data fields can be highly variable if they're not controlled. For example, when a user is asked to provide a state, they could assume they need to provide the full state name, the first 2 letters of the state, the postal zip code, or the state's abbreviation. In our example, we're going to rebuild the table using data validation to ensure the column input criteria is standardized so that it can be used for future analysis. First, we go to cell B30 and select B30 through B36. Then, we navigate to the ribbon and select Data Validation. In Settings, select Date under Allow, since we are entering a date. Next, we want to define a range of possible inputs. So let's select the Between option. We will define the start date as equals B16, which is cell B16, because this was the earliest starting date in our sample data, and we will define the end date as equals B14, that's cell B14, since this was the latest date that items were sold. Next, select OK. Next, we will work with the months sold column. Months range from 1 to 12 in the standard calendar and are rarely represented as decimals or fractions. Therefore, we're going to restrict the values that represent months to be whole numbers between 1 and 12. In order to do this, let's start by selecting cell C30 through C36. Then, we navigate to the Data tab on the ribbon and select Data Validation. In Settings, we're going to select whole number, and under Allow, we'll put 1 as the first allowable input and 12 as the highest allowable input. Click OK. In order to standardize the unit price, we start by selecting cell E30 through E36. Then we navigate to the Data tab on the ribbon and select Data Validation. In Settings, we're going to select List under Allow. And as the source, let's enter in 1450, 999, and 9.00 because these are our unit price options. Additionally, we can create a list in Excel and highlight this list in the source section of the data validation. For this problem, let's now change the source to equals H30 colon H32. You can also do this by selecting and highlighting H30 through H32. Let's also navigate to the Error Alert tab on the Data Validation pop-up because we want to add an error message if our user inputs a non-valid unit price. In the input message, let's type invalid unit price, and in the title, enter unit price. Click OK. Last but not least, let's look at the revenue column. We start by selecting cell F30 through F36, and then we navigate to the Data tab on the ribbon and select Data Validation. In Settings, we're going to select Decimal under Allow. because our total revenue is in US dollars and cents, which all contain 2 decimal places. We note that the minimum sales value is $1,000, which goes along with our minimum sales quantity of 100 units. So we'll restrict inputs to values greater than 1,000. Click OK. Great job completing data validation for this table. Before moving on to completing problem 1B, take some time to test your data validation criteria and enter in values in this data validation table. Notice, when you enter a unit price that is not in our list, we receive the input error.